gonna say 4 days, that needle didn't move at all. It took that long to actually get it down.
How big of a system is that one in?
That's, I think it's a 4-ton coil. Yeah, I don't remember what the coil actually is.
You're talking about the micron gauge filling up with oil.
Yes,
How do you avoid that?
you have it above your system. Okay?
Don't lay it on the floor, on the ground is what he's saying, you know.
Yeah.
Keep it above your pump.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have the gauge going into your micron, and then you're gonna have another hose coming out of the micron, and then going to, you know, it's basically here, going into your unit that you're evacuating, okay? So I always have a short one right here, short hose. My micron gauge sits right here,
All right.
okay? So I hang my, okay, this one takes a T. Some of them, you have to buy a T to fit in here. Some of them are already have, like the picture, has a T in it. Okay, here's the T right here, okay? So what you would do, by the way, good question. You would put the T on here, okay? And then for illustrative purposes, put your micron gauge on, you hang it, and you have your other hose coming off of here, going down to your unit, okay? So this is above the pump. If you lay this on the ground, it's below your unit and or equal to your unit, equal to the height of the pump, it's gonna get oil in it, has no choice. It's just gonna happen.
And is it because it's so low that it causes oil to flow through it?
No, it's just a fact of oil, you can't suck, you can, but it's difficult to suck oil up.
Does it create a trap, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and so this will just keep that from happening, okay? The higher you can keep it, the better off you are, okay? I'm gonna pass this around so y'all can look at it. Okay, I want to read that last paragraph again. When you evacuate a system, you need accurate readings from the micron gauge. For the most accurate readings, connect your vacuum gauge close to the system as possible to be evacuated. Now, what they're basically talking about here is this yellow hose right here, okay? That needs to be as short as possible, okay? This is acceptable. What you don't want to have is you won't want to have 9-foot hoses. You don't want to have 8 hoses tied together. I know that sounds extreme, but I've actually seen a few places where they go, well, you know, I didn't have an extension cord, but I had about 4 hoses that I could put together. You gave me the same look I gave them. Okay, so, yeah.
Why would you even do that?
Well, they didn't have an extension cord. It's not they didn't have one, they just didn't want to go back to the truck and get it, or go pick it up, or whatever, okay? So,
I'm saying, isn't there like a hardware store in like every little town?
right, yeah, a cheap extension cord goes a long ways when you need something like that. But if you have one on the truck, you shouldn't need one, okay? For the most accurate readings, connect your vacuum gauge close to the system to be evacuated, as far as possible from the vacuum pump. Okay, ideally directly on the service port. Okay, now this is fine. You can put it directly on the service valve port. Here's your service valve. You can put it directly on here as long. 2 things have to happen. Okay, number 1, as long as you have a way to shut it off from here. Because once you open this up, all the Freon's going right through that gauge. 2, it has to be a fresh, clean line set. If this is a change out, that line set's not fresh and clean, I wouldn't do it. Okay? Because you're gonna have issues. You're gonna ruin a $100 gauge over a little bit of footage, 3 foot on a set of hoses. Okay? So I don't do it. That doesn't mean you can't or you shouldn't, but you have to make sure that if you do, that you have shut-off valve so that you can shut that off in order to charge the line, okay? Never connect the gauge in line between the pump and the system. That basically, don't hook it from here with the yellow hose into there, because you're not gonna get an accurate reading, okay? It has to be from the suction port here to the blue gauge, goes through the gauges, out the yellow, and back, okay? Only way it's gonna be accurate. Always measure the vacuum with the vacuum pump shut off and isolated. Basically means turn your gauges off. Turn your gauges off to find out what your micron reading is. You cannot get an accurate reading by letting the pump running and going, oh, yep, it's still sucking down and it's at this point, okay? You're just not gonna get an accurate reading. When shutting off the pump, follow this procedure. Shut or isolate the service hose that is being used to evacuate the system, isolating the pump from the system, okay? So what does isolate mean? We just covered that.
Shut it off, take it away.
Take it, turn it off, absolutely. Shut off the gauges, okay? Break the vacuum in line between the pump and the system. Shut off the vacuum pump. If you simply shut off the vacuum pump without isolating the pump and without breaking the vacuum in the connection hose, the vacuum in the system or the hoses draw oils into the system, resulting in contamination of the system or hose. Okay, basically what you're doing, they're saying is that you could, if you don't you shut your valves off and then you crack the line, the yellow line going to your pump, so the pump's going nuts, and then you shut it off, okay? It keeps pump oil from coming back in your hoses, and that's one thing they forgot to put is pump oil. Measure the final system vacuum with system isolated and the pump off. After you isolate the pump system, wait 10 to 15 minutes to verify the vacuum doesn't reach a level that exceeds 500 microns. If the gauge reading doesn't exceed 500 microns during the waiting period, you know the system has been evacuated adequately. Sorry. And when you take your test, and I want you to double check this, you might put a star 5-minute minimum on the evacuation at the when it says wait 10 minutes to verify, 10 to 15, there is a question. And put a question mark beside that 5-minute minimum, okay? Things have changed since I took the test. I could be wrong. That may be the new normal, okay? Micron gauge reading between 1,000 and 5,000 indicates some moisture remains in the system and requires further evacuation. A micron gauge reading that increases more than 5,000 during the waiting period suggests likelihood of a leak in the system. When a leak exists, you need to identify and repair the leak in the system. If you're over 500 microns, if it consistently raises over 500 microns, forget the 5,000, you need to be checking. You've either got a hose that's leaking, you're not connected right, you've got a leak somewhere in the system, okay? Evacuation can be a slow, tedious process. Rushing the process only leads to improper evacuation levels and causes equipment to operate below peak efficiency and experience premature component failure. You cannot over evacuate a system. Remember what I said earlier about I had one on 2 weeks, okay? Can't over evacuate. Certain techniques can expedite the evacuation. Factors affecting the speed of the evacuation include size of equipment being evacuated, the ambient temperature, amount of moisture in the system, capacity of the vacuum pump, suction sign lies determine the length of dehydration time. During dehydration of the refrigeration system, you can heat the system to decrease the dehydration time. Remember this? Especially in the wintertime. If it's cold outside, make sure your crankcase heater's on, high voltage is there, so it's just gonna help on evacuation, okay? Removing non-condensable gases. If air gets into the refrigerant system or into recovery cylinder, the system doesn't function properly even at the coldest temperatures. The air won't condense in any vapor compression system. This means that the air or any other non-condensable vapors don't condensate anywhere in the vapor compression system, leading to increased system pressures. Actually had a similar situation. Went out on a call, and it was just R22 system, and we're running pressures of over 100 psi. And the temperature was not, the outdoor temperature did not allocate for that type of pressure during running system, running pressures. Come to find out, somebody had been there before me, and they probably just had a recovery tank that they didn't bother to put a vacuum on, and they it had air in it. And so air mixed with the R22, and they just shot it in the system. Now then he had air in his system. What does air have in it?
Water.
Right, moisture, water. What does water do to the oil in a compressor?
Contaminates.
It what?
Contaminates.
Contaminates. What's it cause?
Sludge.
Acids and.
That's right, absolutely. You can cause acid, sludge, DG, whatever, okay? Both of those real simply. And it can cause what we eventually call a burnout. It is a nasty smell, okay? Someone says, well, how do you describe it? You don't. It's not like a rotten egg smell. It's not like armpit smell. It's just a nasty smell that only way I know to describe it is to one of these days you in class, I think, and I'll talk to Rich about it, probably need to have a little bit of Freon in a test situation, like maybe something like this, okay? And to where Freon, just some Freon gases is in here, and then it's welded. And then once it's done being welded shut, the other end is open. Take, and once it's evacuated well, so you know there's no gases left over, you smell it. And you'll smell kind of that burnt smell. And it's the acids and stuff that's caused from the water, the moisture, and so forth. Okay? That's gotten in the system. If you try to recharge the system without first removing the non-condensable gases, the system operates at condensing pressure that are higher than normal because of the air trapped at the top of the condenser. This air effectively reduces the capacity of the condenser to reject heat and raises the overall discharge temperature and pressure. As a result, the system not only loses efficiency, but the components in the system, such as the compressor, have a potential to fail prematurely because of the extra load. Non-condensable gases can also cause chemical reactions that produce what?
Acid.
Acid, which reduces what? Oil lubricancy. Okay? They carry moisture into the system. Water vapor inadvertently introduced into the system with the air that enters the system can harm the system because moisture accelerates the formation of acids, which is formaldehydes, okay, in the refrigerant oil. And if the vapor is operating below the freezing point of the water vapor in the refrigerant can freeze in a small passage of the expansion valve. causing the system to stop cooling. Okay? Does anybody, what's an expansion valve?
It,
TXV?
yeah.
TXV metering device.
Metering device, yeah, that's the.
Okay. So there's three types of metering devices. You have a TXV, it's a mechanical device. And piston. What's the third one?
Capillary tube?
Capillary tubes, absolutely. So what happens is, if you've got a TXV, because it's a mechanical moving part, and it starts to shut down because this little bulb right here has refrigerant in it, and it leaks of some sort, or you have water and air vapor that have gotten in there, and this isn't working properly, it's got too much pressure and it can't open and shut like it should, this is gonna freeze. And when it freezes, it won't let the Freon through to do its job, okay? So it's kind of like a carburetor that just got clogged up. Okay, small passage of expansion, it can freeze in the small passage of the expansion device, causing the system to stop cooling. This unique failure takes place when the system stops cooling after operating a while due to the ice clogged expansion valve. But then, sitting idle, the system again operates normally because the ice thawed out, basically, it melted. The system operates for a while again before ice forms, and the expansion valve device again fails. Okay? To prevent damage to the appliance, you need to ensure non-condensable gases. No non-condensable gases are in the system. One way to avoid it is to do not introduce non-condensable gases into the system. Evacuate the system after the system's been repaired. Pressure leak. A test is done and before charging the system with refrigerant. Never cross-charge a system. What does cross-charge mean?
Had refrigerant that wasn't in there to begin with.
Like,
Wrong type.
right, wrong type of refrigerant. Okay, that may have been what you meant, but, I mean, you can always, I mean, if it's R22, R22 goes back
Well,
in.
I meant you can't put R11 in R22 system.
Right, right.
Something like that.
Absolutely. Okay, good job. If a system is charged with one refrigerant, never top it off with a different. Okay? You need to know if excessive air or other non-condensable gases exist in the recovery cylinder, because you don't want to put refrigerant contaminated with non-condensable gases back into the appliance. Because you know non-condensable gases cause pressures to rise. If you knew that the pressure was supposed to be, and you could measure what the actual pressure was, you might be able to tell if non-condensable gases were in the system. One simple method of checking non-condensables is to use the pressure temperature chart for refrigerant. Basically, guys, there's a recovery tank right here. You can take the ambient temperature right now, and you can put your gauges on there, and you can see if that's 410A or 22 by your pressure chart. You just need an accurate temperature to know what the ambient room temperature is. Put your gauges on, look it up. It'll tell you. If it's higher than that or lower than that, you might have an issue. Okay? If you know the room temperature where the appliance or recovery cylinder is located, this temperature is stable, represents the temperature of the system. You can find out what the pressure should be if no non-condensables are in the system. Then you compare the pressure with the actual pressure. The actual pressure is higher, non-condensables could be present. If you measure a pressure that is lower than the pressure indicated on the pressure temperature chart, one of the following reasons could be: the temperature or pressure readings are incorrect because of unsustainable conditions, measurement devices that are out of calibration, allowing the cylinder temperature to stabilize at room temperature before taking pressure readings. Basically, don't take it out of your van, bring it into the shop that's 20 degrees cooler, and say, okay, it's 60 in here and it's 80 outside, and you're looking for a 60-degree temperature on the tank. You gotta wait till it stabilizes. The refrigerant in is contaminated with another refrigerant. 3, the refrigerant is a blend and has fractioned and a more volatile component has leaked off. When the contamination fractionalization or presence of non-condensables is suspected, don't use refrigerant. Refrigerant must be reclaimed by a certified reclaimer or destroyed by an approved disposal company. This refrigerant cannot be recycled. Okay. Y'all understand what fractionalization means of a blend?
It's a separation of the wood.
Right. 410A is a blend. It literally has 3 different freons that make this compound together, okay? It's kind of like, I don't know, putting eggs, you know, in a cake. And if you use, depending, you know, eggs are made up of a couple of different things, but you put egg, milk, and water together, and you mix it up, you know, you put it in the freezer, sometimes they separate out, you know, they will literally separate themselves. And that's the same thing. You could actually lose, if you have a freon that boils off at a higher temperature, you could lose that freon out of that tank, where the other 2 boils off at a lower temperature and are still, they're still, you know, there. They've maintained their pressure. So it's gonna give you a pressure difference, okay? Any questions? Okay, shop. Shop time. One thing here, make sure you read your answer man, okay? Basically, commercial refrigeration and industrial process refrigeration containing greater than 500 pounds. You need to do a leak check once every how often?
3 months.
Every 3 months, that's right. Containing 50 to 500 pounds is what?
Once per calendar year.
Once per calendar year, as long as there's no leaks found during that time. Comfort cooling, meaning, does anybody know what the comfort cooling means there?
Resident, like,
Comfort cooling, 50 or more pounds. I've not found a residential unit that's 50 pounds. So basically it's like the rooftops at Menards, Walmart, Home Depot, those big units that holds 50 pounds of Freon or more, okay? Where it says commercial, that's for like processing plants, meat processing plants, things of that nature, okay? Because they want to make sure that they stay at a certain temperature, okay? And they need to be checked often. Manufacturing plants, so forth, okay? All right, let's check this out. Y'all come on up. We've got a few different leak detectors here. We talked about this one. We have these. This, PVC. Okay. I learned this a while back. I had a leak that just absolutely I couldn't find. I knew it was there. I isolated it from the indoor to the outdoor. The outdoor had a leak. I couldn't find it. It was driving me nuts. So I listened for it. This becomes a stethoscope. Okay? When you don't have a piece of vinyl tubing, I actually had a guy take a pair of shooting earmuffs that he was going to replace, pulled the guts out of them, drilled a couple of holes, put a T in it with a hose. Now he has a pair of earmuffs like a stethoscope. Okay? Guys, you got to get inventive with this. Okay?
Would an actual stethoscope work?
It will. If you've got access to an old one that maybe a friend or a neighbor, you know, got rid of, this works same way. Okay? I actually, and you're going to laugh at me, I actually took a styrofoam cup, I had a hose, I stuck my pin in the bottom, stuck the hose in there, used the cup.
Hey, that's old school.
Yeah. Okay? Now then, let's put it to practice. Okay? we know that there's a leak here. Anybody remember where the leak is in here?
On that one.
Okay, I will tell you it's in the threads. But we found another leak. So, now this is different than my nitrogen set, so I don't know that I'm gonna use this one quite right. Okay. Now then, someone want to find a leak?
Right here.
Okay, we know that, but now then, the idea is to use your detectors. Someone open up the leak, someone open up the electronic.
I'll turn it on.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, definitely hear it, yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's even louder with that, okay. You always got this in your truck.
Right. Okay, go ahead and pull it out of there.
Is it ready? Alright, it should start beeping, shouldn't it?
Yep. Anybody else wanna listen with this and see what happens? So you have some idea? Nothing? Or can you hear it?
Oh, I can hear it. Well, that's right.
Sounds like an old school phone game.
That'd be right. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay, it'll get you in the vicinity is what it'll do, and that's what you need to do. Okay, when you, a leak like this is too large, because what's gonna happen, you know, that thing is for pinpointing leaks, okay? So, what's that on right now? Is that on medium, normal,
Low.
low?
It's on the,
Okay, hit it once and turn on medium. May have to hold it just a second.
there it is.
Okay.
So it's gonna be right on top of it to notice it.
Well, what it does is, once it goes off, it recalibrates the air,
R2D2.
okay?
It does sound like that.
So,
Space Invader there.
okay, recalibrates the air, okay? Now then, we know that there's a leak here, we know that, let's see if we can find it in the system, okay? Did you wanna hear this? Okay. Okay, have you used one of those before?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let someone else get after it. Show me your technique. Now remember, just don't touch the copper,
Oh, okay.
okay? The more you touch it, the more contaminants it gets in there because it has a vacuum. Remember part of the first half of the class today? That there's a vacuum. Now I'm going to give you a tip and a hint, okay? On this particular coil, now that was me spelling it, okay? You see?
Yeah.
All right, make it go on sensitive.
Okay.
All right, because we know the leak is small, okay? It's going to be real sensitive, and that's what you need to do, but you need to start low. We know there's a leak there, don't we?
Yep.
So when you have that, you step back, okay? You let it recalibrate itself, and then you start again. And you go back to the same area to make sure that that's exactly where you're at, because there are some false positives. And that can just be from my hot air. Okay, we know the general vicinity of that, right? But there's another one. Let's see if we can find the other one. Keep going. Or let someone else try. Go ahead. Anybody, jump up there. Pardon me. Don't keep looking in the same spot. We already know about that one he found.